Earlier this week, I was asked how to reconcile scientific proof of dinosaurs and the Bible not mentioning them. I didn't have a straight answer, but I certainly did not think the Bible contradicts the existence of dinosaurs, and I somehow wasn't convinced they weren't mentioned in the Bible. So I'm breaking down the proposed contradictions here. 1. The Bible denies the existence of dinosaurs. That would have to be true. And 2. 6 days of creations are not literal days, or men lived at the same time frame as dinosaurs did. Does the Bible say dinosaurs don't exist? Well, the Bible doesn't mention the word dinosaurs, but then again, there's a lot of words the Bible doesn't mention. For example, the word atheism isn't mentioned anywhere in the Bible. Does that mean the Bible denies the existence of atheists? Well, let's have a read. Psalm 14, verse 1 reads, "The fool has said in his heart, there is no God." So, there you go. The Bible confirms the existence of atheism through description, not necessarily by using the word. So now how are we doing on the word dinosaurs? Well, the taxon Dinosauria was formally named in 1842 by Richard Owen, who used it to refer to a distinct tribe of reptiles that were being recognized in England and further around the world. The term is derived from the Greek language and refers to terrible, potent, or fearfully great lizard or reptile. Obviously, a Bible written well before the introduction of the term dinosaurs wouldn't use this word. But does this mean the Bible doesn't refer to them? Okay, so let's start at the beginning here. In Genesis, verse 21, New International Version. "So God created the great creatures of the sea and every living thing with which the water teems and that moves about in it, according to their kinds, and every winged bird according to its kind. And God saw that it was good." Now, if you look at the King James Version, it refers to God creating great whales as opposed to great creatures of the sea. So why did it become more vague? Well, the great whales wasn't really a good description if you looked at some of the other verses in the Bible. In Ezekiel 29, verse 3, New International Version, it says, "Speak to him and say, this is what the sovereign Lord says. I'm against you, Pharaoh, king of Egypt, you great monster lying among your streams. You say, the Nile belongs to me. I made it for myself." And then in the King James Version, it refers to the great dragon that lieth in the midst of his rivers. So when we look at Ezekiel 32 verse 2, the King James Version, "Son of man, take up a lamentation for Pharaoh king of Egypt, and say unto him, Thou art like a young lion of the nations, and thou art as a whale in the seas, and thou camest forth with thy rivers, and troublest the waters with thy feet, and foulest their rivers." And you can sort of tell that this is not a good association here. When you're talking about a whale, and you're talking about feet and rivers. So back to Genesis piece that we looked at earlier when they were talking about a great whale. You know, when you look at these translations, it doesn't really fit very well. In Ezekiel 32 verse 2, the New International Version, you see, "Son of man, take up a lament concerning Pharaoh king of Egypt, and say unto him, You are like a lion among the nations, you are like a monster in the seas, thrashing about in your streams, churning water with your feet and muddying the streams." So here they generalized it already to a monster. The reality is we just don't know. So why do we struggle so much with the translation of these animals? And I think part of the reason is that at the time of translation, translators have in mind a known set of animals, where we then end up discovering new species, also extinct species, later down the line. Now, does the Bible exclude dinosaurs? I don't think it does, and even more so, I think it supports the notion of dinosaurs. I'm just going to look at one more set of verses. In Job 40, verse 15 through 19, in the New International Version, we read, "Look at Behemoth, which I made along with you, and which feeds on grass like an ox. What strength it has in its loins, what power in the muscles of its belly. Its tail sways like a cedar. The sinews of its thighs are close knit. Its bones are tubes of bronze, its limbs like rods of iron. It ranks first amongst the works of God, yet its maker can approach it with his sword." So what is Behemoth? When you look at verse 15, Behemoth is a description of this animal. It eats grass like an ox and is very powerful, has bones that are tubes of bronze and limbs like rods of iron. So this is a huge, powerful animal. So some footnotes in some Bibles will suggest it might be an elephant in the comments area, or some might say it's a hippo. But let's test this with verse 17. Its tail sways like a cedar. So I don't know if you've ever seen a cedar tree sway, but that's a very rather stiff, subtle movement as it sways in the wind. And so the tail sways like this. So does it fit the description of an elephant? Well, let's look at that tail. I don't think it fits. Let's look at the hippo. Does that fit? No, I don't think that fits either. Now, would this fit? I think it would. So does the Bible deny the existence of dinosaurs? Well, I would argue it does not, and in fact it supports that it could have references to it. So definitely not denying the existence of dinosaurs. Is it a historical book where it tries to accurately describe all the animals that are available to us throughout history in our animal kingdom? No. Each book was designed and written with a purpose in mind, and none of these purposes include an accurate reflection of history that is as complete as possible. But the Bible most certainly does not deny the existence of dinosaurs, and in fact would support such notion. Okay, so that covered the first part. Now we have to look at the second part. 6 days of creation are not literal days, or men lived at the same time frame as dinosaurs did. So let's take the first portion of number 2. 6 days of creation are not literal days. Well, so there are some arguments that folks make that, a day is in 1,000 years, and 1,000 years is in a day with the Lord. Well, you could argue that, and in some cases or some areas of the Bible this might make sense, but I invite you to read Genesis. It's only the first couple of verses that you got to read through. It's not too much work. I invite you to open it up. It's easy to find. Start of the Bible. Verse 3, God said there will be light, and then there was light. God saw that the light was good, and he separated the light from darkness. God called the light the day, and the darkness he called the night, and then there was evening, and then there was morning, the first day. So then you go through the motions, and you see throughout that, in verse 8, God called the vault sky, and then there was evening, then there was morning, and then there was the second day. So was a day 1,000 years? No, it really looks like we're describing, morning, day, night. We're going through a 24-hour cycle of a day, and a day is a day. So that first portion, 6 days of creation, are not literal days. Well, I'd say they are. So what does that mean? Man lived at the same time frame as dinosaurs did. So I could try and set up an interview with Fred and Wilma and see how they fared with their pet, but except, they weren't really real, were they? So that wouldn't be credible. So here we got an issue. Well, how do we look at this? Okay, I could go into carbon dating, and so that would be a relevant item as well, and it would be a very big topic to go into, and probably a video on its own. So I'm going to leave that alone for now, but do invite you to look at what are the assumptions that are made when you do carbon dating. And and how realistic are those assumptions, and think about all things being equal in the environment, and that environment not being ever changing. So there's some things that are major assumptions that could hugely affect the outcome of the outcome of the datings, and so have a look at that. But I want to leave you with this mosaic. It's called the Nile Mosaic of Palestrina. It's a Hellenistic form mosaic depicting the Nile in its passage from Ethiopia to the Mediterranean. It has a width of 5.85 meters and a height of 4.31 meters. It's pretty big, and gives a glimpse into the history. This is the 1st century before Christ, so have a look at that, and then look particularly at the top right portion of the rectangular shape in this image, and look at the detail of overall of this mosaic. I mean, it's very detailed. You can clearly make out the humans in it, and then what do you see? An elephant, a hippo. I'll leave you with that. Thanks for tuning in.